Hey everyone, this is Craig here again from vaclassroom.com, and welcome to our second and final Q&A screencast for the Web Design Specialist program. I'm here with the number one trainer and our faculty member for web design, Amanda Aiken. Hey Amanda.
Hello, hi everybody.
Yeah, good to have you all here today. And again, this session is really all about, we've compiled some of your questions from the last couple of weeks, and Amanda's kind of prepared some presentation based on that. And then if there's time at the end, if there's some live questions, we'll definitely take those as well. So I think this is going to be a really productive time. So with that being said, I'll pass it over to Amanda.
Very good. Okay, so hello everybody. It's been super fun getting to know you all on the message board and seeing how you guys are progressing with the content in the course. And that said, we definitely have some interesting and juicy questions to cover today. So I guess I'm just going to dive right in. So the first question we have, and just so you know, if I don't cover all your questions, I will come back to your question you added later towards the end. I'm just doing them in chronological order. So the first question we have is from Jennifer. And Jennifer says, hi Amanda, does the Thesis Nav menu come in individual boxes that can be separated into individual buttons, or does it tend to stick to being a bar? So this is a great question. When it comes to the nav bar that comes with Thesis, or the menu that you would set up within Thesis and WordPress, it will generally, by default, look like more of a bar. So for example, here on the Girls Guide to Web Design site, we've got this white bar that goes across the width of the site. But like everything in Thesis, you can change that as much as you want. So actually, there's a great tutorial, and I think I shared the link on the message board a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week ago. But in case you missed that, I want to show you guys this. This is a tutorial, and I'll post all the links and sort of all the important bits of code and things that I go through in today's webinar on the message board, so that you guys can go back and refer to it later. So I'll post the link to this after we're done with the webinar. But here we are on this great sort of guide to styling the nav menu. This is housed on the DIY Themes site. So they've got tons of great content available for public consumption here on the site. This is inside the user's guide, which I believe, actually no, I don't think you need to be logged into the DIY Themes site to see it. So I think this is really truly public. And they've got a few cool ideas here for things you can do with your nav menus. So they're calling this one, for example, minimalist simplicity. And the ribbon effect, where you see here on the left, there's this kind of, looks like a ribbon is kind of coming down off the edge of the nav bar and stuff like that. And what you're asking about, Jennifer, is sort of a look, if I understand you correctly, a look that's kind of similar to this. So it looks like you've got kind of a button behind each item in your navigation bar. So if you want to do this on your site, all you have to do is copy this code that they give you. This is a CSS code that we're going to put in our custom.css file. And you can see how it looks, and then you can tweak it. So it's not saying that you absolutely have to have a gray, background color with gray colors and that kind of thing. You can always tweak that after, but this is a great starting point because it'll give you sort of some base code to work with. So let's see what happens. We'll go back to my my hideous test site that I use for things like this. And this is, as you can see at the top, just a regular looking nav bar. So it's got a bunch of different test pages listed. It's gray and it's white. And we can, of course, go into design options to change certain things about the nav bar. Actually, quite a lot of things when it comes to colors and stuff like that here in this middle area. So nav menu, we've got the color of the text in different states. So, when you hover over it, or when it's like a parent link, when you're on a child page, meaning a page that's like appearing below a parent item in a drop-down menu. You can fool around with all these settings, but if you want to do something a little more advanced, like what we're seeing here on this tutorial on the DIY Themes site, then you're going to need to get into adding some CSS code. So I'm just going to paste this code into our custom.css file. Just going to go down to the bottom here, paste it in, save button, and let's go back to the site and refresh. And you can see the nav bar has changed into this much more slick looking look with the actual individual buttons behind each menu item. So if I didn't want it to be gray in the background, or I didn't want anything to be gray and I wanted to use, you know, blue or purple or whatever, I could absolutely do that by using Firebug. So I would just open up Firebug. There we go. Firebug's a little slow on the uptake today. And for example, if I want to get rid of this gray background color, I'm going to click. First, I've chosen the little blue arrow selection tool here at the bottom left, or the top left of the left Firebug pane. And that lets me select things when I move my mouse around. And I'm going to click once on this gray background color to kind of freeze the code in place in both the bottom panes here in Firebug. And I'm going to look for something that refers to a background color. And the cool thing about Firebug is here in the first chunk of code, I don't really see anything about background color. It's talking about other stuff unrelated to background. But then in the second chunk of code, I see the background is set to be this hex code, which is 6 Cs, which creates a gray color. And you can see when you mouse over it that gray box that appears is the same as the color you see at the top of the page. So if I wanted to change this to just white, for example, I can change it there in Firebug, and then I would take this code. Oops. I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to take this whole chunk and we're going to put it into our custom.css file, because whatever we do in Firebug, remember, we're just previewing. So by adding code in here or changing code that's here, we can see in real time what's happening on the site, but we're not actually putting the changes in place. So I've copied this code, and if I close Firebug, and just to demonstrate that, I'm going to refresh the page here. And you can see that the gray background color has returned, even though I entered a different background color in Firebug, and that's because Firebug is just showing us a preview. So now if I go back to the custom file editor, I'm just going to go down to the bottom. I'm going to paste in what I got out of Firebug. And I'm going to remove all the code that I'm not bothering with at this point in time. So the only thing I had tried to preview or change using Firebug was the background color. So I don't need this other stuff. It just clogs up your custom.css file. So I'm going to delete that stuff. And I don't even need this stuff either. There are some other sort of combined CSS style rules preceding the background color. And I'm just going to leave it like that. And in case you were wondering, in CSS, there are certain things that are kind of like shorthand, I guess is the best way to describe it. So I taught you in the course when you want to set a background color to use background color like this, but background will also work. So that's just one of those little shortcuts if you want to just save a few keystrokes. So if I save this now, and we go back to look at the A Kiss from Paris site and refresh, now you can see that the background color is gone because I've actually put the instructions in custom.css. So that's just a little preview of things you can do with your nav bar, but really it's kind of the sky's the limit with this. So you can change colors, you can go back into the custom file editor and tweak other things that are here in this code. It's really up to you, but you're not bound to having a bar-shaped nav menu whatsoever. That's one of the cool things about Thesis. You can turn things into whatever you want. Okay, so I'll post that the link to that tutorial on the message board after the webinar, so you can refer back to it. Another question from Jennifer is, also, I noticed in the video where you make a custom nav menu that it came up automatically side by side across the top. Is it possible to make it run down the side of a page? So yes, the answer is it is definitely possible. You would need to use some PHP code to make this happen, but I actually have, luckily, a chunk of code that we can use for exactly that, and I'll share it with you guys because it is one of those nice things that it's just nice to be able to do it easily if that's the kind of look you want to go for on the site you're designing. So I just want to show you this, I'll warn you, very bright site. This is a site I designed a couple of years ago, and this is a Thesis-based site, and they have on the left their menu. So instead of having it along the top, which is what happens by default with WordPress and Thesis, they wanted it to be on the left. So I used the same chunk of code that I'm about to show you to make the menu appear in the sidebar here, as I did, let's see here, or as I'm about to show you. So I actually have a file open here that you guys can't see, but I'm just gonna grab that code. And again, I'll share this with you guys later, but this is code that's going to go in custom functions.php because it's PHP code. So remember, we only ever put CSS in custom.css, and we only ever put PHP in custom functions.php. So I'm going to just hit enter a few times to just make a little space visually between the comments here and the chunk of code that I'm pasting in. So I just pasted in this code. And I'm just going to make sure there are no empty spaces at the end. If you saw there looks like there's a couple of lines here underneath or following the last bit of code. And it's always a good practice whenever you're doing anything in custom functions.php to make sure that you don't have extra spaces after the final chunk of code you have in the file, because that can sometimes cause problems. Not always, but sometimes. It's just one of those annoying things about PHP. It's a little more finicky than CSS. So I'm going to save this. And if I go back here to our Kiss from Parasite, as you'll see, the menu is up here on the top. But if I refresh, we've now got it here in the right sidebar. Now, it doesn't look so good, and it's for some reason overlapping this other thing we have here. And I think that's because I had set some negative margins or something for this this chunk of stuff in the sidebar or something like that. But if you haven't done anything weird like that to your site, then it should work like a charm for you. And I think what it's actually doing is it's filling up the, I think it's filling up the natural sort of defined width of the sidebar, which is why we have this home tab and this test page 5 tab side by side, because they are able to fit side by side within the width of the sidebar. So if you wanted to tweak that, you might have to use Firebug to specify that each menu item should be a specific width. So you'd want to set each one to be slightly wider, and then these two wouldn't be able to fit on the same line, so you'd get every menu item stacked one on top of the other, which is probably your desired effect. And of course that will be a problem anyway if your menu items have more text on them than mine do. So you might need to tinker a little bit, but you can probably just grab the code I'm going to post on the message board, and you can just put that in your custom.php file. One note when it comes to editing your custom functions PHP file, it's definitely a good idea. I know we've talked about this before, but I just want to mention it again. It's definitely a good idea to take a backup of your file. So the easiest way to do that is to connect to your site via FTP, to navigate to that file, and I'll post the file path just as a reminder so that you know once you connect to your site via FTP in FileZilla, okay, how do I find the custom functions.php file? So I'll tell you how to do that, just so you have that as a reference. And all you have to do is download the file to your computer before you make any changes to it. So the idea is you want to have the last known working version of custom functions.php saved to your computer just as a backup. So then if you put something in custom functions.php and you get locked out of your site, which usually looks like you try to access your site and all you see is a white screen with like a black error message at the top in Times New Roman font, then all you have to do is go back into your FTP and re-upload the backup that you had just taken. So you're going to be replacing the file on the server that now has some code with a problem in it with the one that you know was working and that you had saved to your computer already. So it's just the basic principle of replacing a file that apparently has a problem with it with the one that you know doesn't have any problem. So that's a very quick fix if you ever run into that. And don't worry, I know it's a scary thing when that does happen, but it happens all the time. So as long as you remember to keep a backup, like just take a backup before you make any changes to custom function.php, then you are going to be golden. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove this code for now, because I think I have to show you something else in a minute that is going to interfere. So let's just double check this, that the menu has gone back to horizontal orientation, and it has. Okay, so that's good. Yeah, so the next question from Jennifer has to do with headers. Jennifer asks, can you place different headers on each page? Yeah, so this is definitely a great thing to know how to do, because it's kind of, it adds, I think, to the richness of the experience on a website if every page, or at least certain pages, have different header images. So you don't, it gives a more sort of customized feel. To give you an example, this is a site I designed that's since been changed a bit by Rika, the owner of the site, who is a very lovely person. I loved working with her. But we do have two different header images, I believe, on this site. So this is her header image up here if you're on most pages of the site, and then if you click on blog, there's this different header image. Milk bar is kind of the theme of her blog. She's got all kinds of things about making nut milk and stuff like that. It's pretty neat. So in terms of how to do this, I will also post up the link to a tutorial that's also here on the DIY Themes site. There are two ways you can do it. There's the CSS method, and it's easier than the other method, which involves using PHP. So I would recommend that you try, if you're going to try this, you try the CSS method. So it's pretty nicely outlined here on this page, and I'll post the link. But the PHP method lets you get a little bit more sort of intense with your rules about what header image should appear when. Like you can say this header image should only appear on this page if this condition is met, and that kind of thing. So it adds that extra layer of complexity. But most of you shouldn't need to do that. I mean, if you do, there's a primer to it on this page. But the CSS method should be good for you guys for the most part. I believe I used PHP to do it on this site, but it was definitely a bit finicky. I mean, PHP is definitely going to be more involved no matter what you're doing with it. So I'll post the link to this tutorial so that you guys can check that out if you like the idea of having different header images on different sites. But basically all you'll do is you'll create your different header images, you'll upload them to your web server via FTP, and then you'll just have to make note of the file path, the complete URL, in other words, for each image you've uploaded. And then you can follow the method in this article that will tell you how to basically tell Thesis to show this header image on one page and this other file for the header image on another page. So that's it in a nutshell. Now we have a question from Lisa, and Lisa says, is there a way to get Facebook to link with one particular image for my URL without it overriding the images that I want displayed with blog posts? I think it's really only a problem when sharing a link to my website in comments on Facebook. My Tungle icon is what is chosen as the image for my homepage URL. I tried to Google it, but the solutions I found would cause one image to be displayed for the entire site. If it's too complicated to deal with for the Q&A, or you don't know, don't worry about it. I was just wondering if there might be some kind of simple solution that you know of. Okay, so this is a great question, Lisa. It's definitely possible to do this, but it's going to require some sort of fancy PHP stuff, or you might be able to find a plugin that would let you do that. I haven't had much luck, to be honest, with these types of, there are all these plugins now that are supposed to allow you complete control over, which image gets shown on Facebook depending on what type of, link from your site someone is sharing. So I think I've come across a few that are supposed to let you specify, if someone's on the home page, show this image when somebody shares the URL on Facebook. But if somebody's on a post, then pull the major image from the post. But I've never really gotten any of them to work properly. I think when it comes right down to it, this is one of those things that's much better handled with, actually being hand-coded in PHP. And that being said, it's kind of outside the scope of anything we've looked at. This might be a good thing for you to get hired out just for like a one small project type of thing, and then you can just reuse the code and make a few tweaks for other client sites that you're building. That's what I do. But I think it would be best if you probably go directly to a PHP developer on that, because they're the people who are constantly keeping up to date with all the changes that Facebook makes to their code, because they do make changes all the time. It's crazy. Like I have a friend, and I'm actually going to recommend you contact him. I have a friend who is, has a great series of posts on his blog about how to do exactly what you're asking to do. I mean, not necessarily show one image for the homepage and a different image for elsewhere, but how to get the image thumbnail pickup stuff working normally with Facebook, so that you get the image that actually represents your site showing up when someone shares your URL on Facebook, or you share your URL on Facebook. And he's had to keep redoing his tutorials time and time again, because Facebook is always changing stuff on their kind of back end of the code. So this is one of those things that I would say is best, unless you can find a plugin that magically works, best handled by an expert. I think I've told you guys about it before. My main go-to guy for stuff like this, his name is Jason, and he works at a company called Design PX. He's the creative director there. And he's just wonderful. He's wonderful to work with, and he's happy to work on small projects, big projects. So you could work with him. You can email him at jason@designpx.com, and that's just design and then the letter P and the letter X. And if you tell him that Amanda Aitken sent you, he'll take extra good care of you. He's been very nice that way. I refer people to him a lot, and they're always very happy with his work. So, and you could even ask him, I would like to be able to reuse this code on different sites for my clients, so could you deliver it to me, in an email, in addition to putting it in place on this site? Could you deliver it to me in an email with portions of the code highlighted in red that I would need to change? And they would just be things like, not actual coding things, but things like a URL for an image, or like the Facebook, the Facebook ID for the page that you're going to be linking to, and that kind of thing. So it's nothing too crazy, but it would just let you kind of tweak and drop in the correct values, and in theory it should then work on other sites. So it might be a good investment. Okay, next question is from Jacqueline. Jacqueline says, I've tried everything to get the drop cap to change colors, but it stays gray. Here's the CSS code I have, and she gave me her code she's using. She says it looks perfect in Firebug, but when I copy it over, it continues to stay gray. Any ideas what I'm doing wrong? Off the top of my head, Jacqueline, I don't think you must not have had a chance to see it. I just posted it this morning in the thread about the questions for today's webinar. If you could email me the URL for your site, that would be very helpful, as well as your WordPress login information if you're comfortable. If not, you can even just post the URL for your site on the message board, and I can go and have a look. Because that's one of those things that's much easier to be able to help you with if I can actually see what's happening with the code on your specific site. So I'm happy to help you with that after the fact. Okay, now we have a question from Katie, and Katie says, hi Amanda, if you have time during this Q&A, I would really appreciate a demo of the Widget Logic plugin so I can add different menus down the sides of pages. Yes, okay. So for those of you who haven't ever heard of the Widget Logic plugin, I'm going to give you a brief rundown. So let's see here. This is the home page for the Widget Logic plugins. This is like like most plugins that are available for WordPress. This one has its own page where you can learn all about the plugin. You can click these different links here along the top and find out more. You can see how many people have downloaded it and how many people have rated it and that kind of thing. So this is a very popular plugin. It's had over 399,000 downloads, which is pretty good. And it's great because the way it works is it allows you to say, okay, let's say I have these two different items in my sidebar, so two different widgets. Like you've got two text widgets, or you've got like a calendar widget and a text widget. And you only want the calendar widget to appear on one of the pages in your site, and you don't want it to appear on any others. Well, the Widget Logic plugin lets you do that. So it lets you say, okay, I don't want this to show on this page, or I do want this to show on this page, or whatever. So the reason that it's called widget logic is obviously it has to do with widgets, and the logic aspect comes in when you think about the fact that you're going to be kind of coming up with these logical statements, and logic is very much at the center of the learning PHP world. So that's where the name comes from. You'll see what I mean in a second, I think. So the first thing, if you want to use this on your site, is to install Widget Logic. So you can find it. I've already gone ahead and have installed it, but you can just search for it under plugins. So you just click Add New, and you search for it and install it the way you would any other plugin. And what it does is, once you have it on your site, if you go into the widgets area, which is of course what controls everything in your sidebar, you'll see, let's say I open up this widget here at the top of my sidebar, which is that red box I have going. It says at the bottom, it's got this, actually I'm just going to delete this, that's for my example. So you'll get this extra box here that says Widget Logic, and you can type in here. So, and this will appear, I'm just going to show you, this will appear in every widget box. So you've got that option to type something in the Widget Logic box for every widget. So how does it work? Well, let's say, for example, let's see here. Let's say we want to show that red box. So here's the red box. And let's say we want to only show it on this page called test page 5 that I've got here. So this is test page 5. Let me see here. I'm just going to delete, make sure that this is saved, what I've done before. Okay, there we go. So right now we're on test page 5, and you can see that there's the red box appearing because I haven't put anything in any kind of widget logic boxes, and of course anything you put in the sidebar here under appearance and widgets is going to appear on all pages until you've done something with widget logic. So if I want the red box to only appear on that page called test page 5, what I'm going to do is I need to write a little bit of PHP code, and don't worry, this isn't as scary as it sounds, in the little box down here. So that's going to tell this widget to only appear on the test page 5 page. So there are different little bits of code you can use. This is right now I'm on the other notes page here on the Widget Logic homepage. So there's like description, installation, FAQ, et cetera, et cetera. The other notes page is a good one to go to because it gives you an idea of the basics of using the conditional tags or PHP tags in Widget Logic. So it has some examples here that are very handy. So for example, if you were to put in that little Widget Logic box inside that widget is underscore home with these two round brackets, then you'd be telling the red box to only show up on the main blog page. And they've got a ton of other examples that get more complicated, and don't worry too much about those. You'll probably just be wanting to use it for relatively basic things. Another good site for you to refer to is this. This is the WordPress Codex, as it's called. So it's a big list of conditional tags that refer to certain kind of definitions within WordPress. And if you kind of combine, if you read through this, and you'll kind of get a feel for what this is all about, and then you read through the instructions on the Widget Logic page, it should be pretty straightforward. I think it'll kind of start to gel for you. So for our purposes, for our example, if we want that red box to only appear on test page 5, what we're going to do is figure out, okay, so what do I need to put in that Widget Logic box? So here on the WordPress Conditional Tags page, there's this area here that talks about a page. It's kind of confusing because basically in WordPress there are posts and there are pages. So that's why they're capitalizing that here. They're just trying to drive home the fact that these are the tags to use if you want to target something that's an honest to goodness page. So in this case, actually across all cases in WordPress, every page has its own ID. So you never really see this ID. It's kind of it's a number that kind of runs in the background, and it's just a way that the WordPress database can identify a page as being a different page from another page. So if we go, for example, I'm going to show you under pages here. So I'm back inside the WordPress dashboard for the A Kiss from Paris site, and I want to find out the page ID for test page 5. So how am I going to do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mouse over the title of the page here, and I don't know how well you guys will be able to see this, but at the very bottom of my browser, there's a URL appearing. It says akissfromparis.com/wp-admin/post.php ? Post equals 147, and then it has some other code after that. So again, this is kind of weird because WordPress handles posts and pages in a similar way, yet not. So don't be concerned that it's talking about posts. We are, in fact, looking at the right place for pages, but it will just say post in that URL down at the bottom, so don't worry about that. But the number is what we're interested in. So I said that it says post equals 147. That's the number we need to work with when we're putting together the little bit of code we're going to put in the widget logic box. So we need to just remember that it's 147. I'm just going to write that down so I don't forget. And then we're going to go back to the widgets area. We're going to reopen this widget with the red box that we want to affect in some way, shape, or form. And I'm actually now going to go to the WordPress Conditionals page, and let's see here. This is what I'm going to copy. So this is going to allow us to target a specific page. So just bear with me for a second. So I'm just going to copy this, and it says is_page, and then in brackets it says 42, and 42 is just an example page ID that they're giving here. And if I go back to our widgets and I paste that in here, but then I change the 42 to 147 because that's the page ID for the page we want the red box to show up on, and then I click save, and basically what this is saying is if the page is page ID number 147, display this red box. So if I go here and I refresh the page, we are actually on test page 5. So if I refresh, we should still see it. So that's the first thing we want to test. So that's good, it's appearing. Now the second part of the test is to make sure it's not appearing on any other page, because that's what we basically told it to do with the widget logic thing. So if I go to the home page, you'll see that it's not showing up there, and it's not showing, whoops, let's go here, test page 4, test page 3. It's not showing on any of these pages. It's only showing on test page 5. Now, on the other hand, one thing you can do is you can reverse the logic that you're using in widget logic by adding an exclamation mark in front of whatever you put in the widget logic box. So if I put an exclamation mark right here at the beginning of this little bit of code, what I am saying is show this box on every page except the page that has an ID of 147. So it's just totally doing a complete 180. So if I save, now I should see that it doesn't appear on test page 5, and that's exactly what's happening, but it does appear on all the other pages. So that's the basic gist of using widget logic. I know it can seem a bit crazy, but hopefully you'll also kind of feel an odd spark of excitement because it is very empowering in terms of getting creating sites for your clients that really have that extra layer of customization, because it doesn't so much seem like a template where everything is the same on every page. Different pages can have different things. Now, widget logic only works for sidebars, but just to give you a little heads up that if you ever do take it upon yourself to learn some PHP, or not even necessarily learn it, but if you get comfortable with putting stuff in your custom functions.php file that you might find on the DIY Themes forum or on tutorials online, then you are going to have the ability to do that kind of thing on other areas of your site. So that's basically what PHP does. It's all about conditionals, like if this condition is met, for example, if we're on this particular page, make this happen. And if this condition is not met, then make this other thing happen. So that's kind of the essence of PHP, but widget logic makes it easier because you don't actually have to write out whole sort of conditional statements and rules and things. You literally just need to copy and paste these little bits of code and just tweak them according to the IDs that you need and that kind of thing. So I will post the links to both these important pages after the webinar for sure. Okay, another question from Katie. Katie says, I'm amazed at how user-friendly and thorough the Thesis theme is. No wonder you based your course on this theme. However, as a VA, I am asked to maintain and make changes on other WordPress themes and need help, visual preferred. Can you recommend a good YouTube channel for tutorials on WordPress that I can access anytime? Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know of a YouTube channel that's great for that kind of thing. The thing with being asked to make changes to sites that aren't Thesis-based sites, which of course is going to happen. I mean, sure, you can begin now your campaign to sort of educate your clients that Thesis is really a great way to go, but the fact is tons of your clients right now will have sites that aren't based on Thesis, and of course that's fine. I mean, everyone has their reasons for choosing the theme that they've chosen, but when it comes to being able to make changes to themes, I mean, there are certain things you can do, of course, within WordPress itself, like updating pages, updating stuff that's in the sidebar, and that kind of thing. But actually making changes to the structure or design or layout of a theme is going to be very theme specific. So you're basically either going to have to see if the theme itself has sort of like support offered for it, or maybe they have their own tutorials, or I guess it's possible someone else will have developed a course surrounding that theme, although that's usually unlikely. It's mostly only the really big themes that have that kind of thing developed for them. But one thing I did think of for you, I don't know if you're familiar with this site, Udemy. That's udemy.com. If you go to udemy.com and you search for WordPress, there's a ton of WordPress courses available, and they're pretty reasonably priced. So some of them have to do with learning more about WordPress themes, and that could be something interesting for you to look into, because if you can work on cultivating your skills that would be required to kind of hack or change any theme, but it usually will require that you know some PHP. But looks like there are some courses in here that address that type of thing, so it could be worth looking at. And there are more that are just sort of general WordPress themes, general WordPress courses as well. So, and some are free, some are like $100, or different prices, but worth a look, I think. Okay, another question from Katie. Are you or do you know someone that offers consulting via email, phone, or Skype for WordPress troubleshooting? Yeah, I don't offer that myself, but I actually was just working recently with, very recently, with a great guy. I mean, there's Jason, who I recommend to people a lot, and that's Jason at designpx.com. And this other guy I've been working with, who's more for sort of, well, actually, I mean, Jason does all the same things he does, but this is just another alternative for you. His name is WP Dude, so as in WordPress Dude. So wpdude.com. He's based in the UK. He does excellent work. He's fast. He's reasonably priced, and he's got a good system in place for managing all these kinds of little one-off fixes. And yeah, he'll help you with like plugin issues, anything you can think of really, and he's great. So wpdude.com. I would suggest you check him out. I don't think he offers phone or Skype necessarily, but he's good on email. I've been emailing with him. Okay, now we've got a question from Andrea, and Andrea says, "Hi Amanda, one of my biggest pet peeves with some custom WordPress sites and themes is cool look versus site functionality. Every so often I come across a WordPress site that's been customized to create a unique and visually appealing website. Unfortunately, sometimes these sites were customized in a way that makes it impossible to do some of the simplest and most common management and maintenance of the site once the designer says adios." For example, I'm working with a client whose web designer customized the Genesis theme for them. It looks nice and clean, yes. Unfortunately, they've lost the ability to add a new page, like their blog, to the top level nav bar without the new nav item wrapping to the next line and breaking the look of the header and weirding out the navigation links altogether. I would like your opinion on best practices of WordPress theme customization do's and don'ts. Having a list of just because you can doesn't mean you should customizations to stay away from or to talk to your customers out of would be nice to know. Okay, so I think, let's see, oh yes, sorry. Then she goes on to say, I'm thinking that part of designer best practices should include basic testing of common modifications done by the client, like number 1, verify the client can add and remove items to the menu through the built-in WordPress menu feature without causing a negative effect. Number 2, verify the client can add and remove a page or post through the built-in WordPress feature without causing a negative effect. And number 3, verify the client can add and remove widgets in the sidebar through the built-in WordPress feature without causing a negative effect. Thanks, Andrea. Okay, so I think, yeah, I think you kind of answered your own question, which is kind of cool. In a nutshell, with Thesis, none of these things should cause a negative effect. Like if you create a site for someone and for a client and you hand it over to the client, and then the client or somebody else on the client's team or something is changing or wants to add pages to the nav bar or making updates, like adding new pages and posts or something like that, there really shouldn't be a problem. The only time there should be a problem potentially is if the client's trying to change actual design elements. So then you kind of got this trade-off going between having a really super unique look and feel, or the ability for the client to be able to change parts of the design worry-free. But those are only more sort of involved design customizations. Things I can think of that you should pass on to a client whenever you create a site in Thesis for the client. It's just good to keep in mind about the nav bar that if you have a lot of items in the nav bar, that adding a new one, it might push the nav bar onto a second line. So that's just one of those things that's good to be aware of. There's ways to work around it. I mean, basically, you're just going to have to tell the client, look, of course you can add things to the navigation bar just by going into the appearance and then menus area in WordPress, for example. But keep in mind that if you add something like a ton of extra stuff or something that's got a really long name in the tab, then it might wrap over to the second line. So to avoid that, of course, you don't want to tell people they can't change their menu because it's very important to have that flexibility there. Just make the client aware, I would say, that that's the case, that might happen. So if you want to add something like that to your nav bar, you might want to look at slightly restructuring your nav bar, like maybe changing something to a drop down, or decreasing the length of some of the other longer menu items or whatever. So it's kind of just common sense. But I think it's a great idea to let the client know. I mean, basically the nav bar is going to fit within the width of the site that you've specified. And unless you change the width of that site at the same time as you add more stuff to the nav bar, you're going to have to be a little bit flexible, or willing to be a little bit flexible and change maybe a couple of things. So that's what I would say about the nav bar. The only other really thing that I can really think of is that, I mean, when it comes to stuff that you want clients to be able to do on their own site, you want them to be able to add things to their sidebar, probably. That's a nice ability for them to have. That should be fine for the most part, too, unless the client tries to put something, like put a text widget or some other widget between two other widgets that you have in the sidebar, and maybe you've applied like a negative margin to one of those other two widgets to pull them closer together or something like that. And then if the client goes and puts their own widget between your two widgets that were very carefully positioned with that negative margin, then you're going to get kind of a funny looking effect and probably not the desired effect. So to guard against that, I would say it's a good idea to just, depending on the way you've designed and set up a site for a client, just give the client a document, like just a little, Word document or something, that says, okay, here are the things to keep in mind that you don't want to touch, and here's what to maybe consider if you do want to touch this, that, and the other thing with the design and that kind of thing. So it's really just about educating the client so there aren't any unpleasant surprises, and keeping in mind that there's no way, nothing we can do to really ensure that if the client's in there making changes to things, that everything is going to stay 100% looking the way we intended it to. That said, I mean, there's not really much that a client could do to mess up a Thesis site when they're just doing standard tasks like adding new pages, adding new posts, and that kind of thing. So, oops, hadn't touched the mist in a while. There goes my Aurora Borealis screensaver. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question, Andrea. Let me know if not, or if there's more information I can give you about anything like that. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things that helps to be upfront with the client. Good idea to get a feel for, like, this is the question I like to ask my clients. So, do you have a team who you believe are going to be managing your site in the future, or do you expect to be making a lot of changes to the site in the future? And that will give you an idea of how careful you have to be about that kind of thing. Because some clients, they don't even care. Like, they just want their site, and they want to be thrilled with their site, and then they kind of are very hands off about it, aside from maybe adding a blog post a couple times a week or something. But some clients really do find, once you give them this gorgeous site, that they have this funny desire to kind of get their hands dirty and get in there and see what's happening. And as the designer, I won't lie, it can be a bit frustrating, because I mean, it's great the client's having fun. The client's in there and they've probably discovered some new love for WordPress and web design and coding, but it is possible that your design may be altered in some way. So you never know. You might want to make a point of going back to all your client sites every once in a while, and if you see something that looks wonky, this is a good relationship building thing with your clients too. You can just send an email to the client and say, I was just checking out your site. I noticed something's looking a little bit off. Like, would you mind if I went in to tweak it? Because that way it does kind of help you keep, your portfolio will be looking a lot better, and it'll be a lot more easily controlled by you if you do make those little stop buys on all the sites, because you'd be amazed at how people can take matters into their own hands. And yeah, I mean, if you're going to do a really minimalist site for someone, then it's like a really just sort of clean, basic site, then it's less of a problem. But it can be a slight issue if you have a very creatively designed site and you've got a client who's really into making changes to it. So these are just kind of unavoidable things, kind of the name of the game, but good to be aware of. Okay, now we have a question from Katie again, and Katie says, I noticed that you add images in the FTP files. Can we just add images, PDFs, etc. in the media library through the WordPress dashboard? That's how I've always done it. Does it make a difference in there or not if you don't do it via FTP? No, so it doesn't make a difference if you prefer to use the media uploader in WordPress. And just to give you guys as a reminder, that's over here in WordPress on the left side of the screen, media. So if you need to upload an image or something that you created, it's very easy. You just click this Add New, you select the file from your computer, and it'll take you through a little, here, let's just select the file here. Oh, okay. Just trying to find the... let's use this. This is a beautiful photo of this hotel in Bali that I want to stay at. So if you upload your file, and then it'll give you the file URL, and this is what you need a lot of the time. So I could copy this file URL, and then I could use it in my HTML, like if I wanted to add this image into my sidebar or something, for example. So you would just click Save All Changes, and now you have the image in your media library, and you have the URL that you can grab at any time by coming back in here and clicking the edit link. So if you're comfortable doing it that way, Katie, that's no problem at all. The only, well, the benefit to using FTP is that you can upload many files at once. Like, you can highlight a bunch of files and then drag them all over to upload them all, and you don't have to do it one by one and stuff like that. And also through the Windows, the WordPress media library, you do not have the ability to do things like rename files and folders that are outside of the kind of upload folder that WordPress uses to store your images and things. So, for example, you couldn't have used this method for renaming your custom sample folder to custom, which is what you guys had to do at the beginning of the course, right? But if you don't mind the fact that it's a little slower to do things this way, and if you're more comfortable with it, that's totally fine, and I understand. I mean, FTP does seem very weird and foreign to a lot of people. So go for it if that's doing the trick for you. And okay, I think our final question is again from Katie, and Katie says, could you please give me a best practices answer for this, Amanda? My client has an old HTML site that she wants to leave up while I build her a new Thesis site. The old site is hosted at HostGator, and she wants the new one at GoDaddy. Should I transfer the old site to GoDaddy first, hosting and domain? When I build the site on the dummy URL, hersite.previewdns.com, what is the process to transfer the new site to her domain name, and do I risk broken links and such? Thanks so much, Katie. Okay, so I already posted this on the message board. I'm just going to state this again. I totally understand, Katie. I know you have your clients. Some clients they want the web host they want, and you can't change their minds. But just as a general advisory, if any of you are have clients who are considering signing up with GoDaddy or like wanting to switch to GoDaddy or something like that, I would try to dissuade them, just because GoDaddy is really not the best of the best when it comes to hosting. They cram a lot of sites onto one server, and it can result in slow load times and site downage and that kind of thing. So, but I mean, that said, if your client really wants GoDaddy, and as you mentioned, your client has all her sites hosted with GoDaddy, so I understand the want to keep them all under one roof. The first thing you'd want to do is to migrate to the new web host. So you'd want to migrate away from HostGator to GoDaddy. There is I've never done that myself because I'm always trying to migrate things away from GoDaddy, but I found this article for you. I'll post the link after, migrating websites from shared hosting accounts, and they kind of walk you through it a little bit. It also mentions that, like I know, for example, Green Geeks, this is one of the reasons why I like them so much, what they actually do is they will migrate your site for you. So you just sign up with Green Geeks and you tell them, I want you to migrate my site, and they'll just do everything for you, which is really great. It looks like GoDaddy will do that if you have a particular type of web hosting account. It looks like managed hosting or an assisted service plan. So what I would recommend you do is actually call up GoDaddy and explain your situation and see what they recommend. I mean, it might be worthwhile to you and your client to purchase one of these kind of add-ons to get them to help you with that migration, just because migrations can get a little bit tricky or just kind of annoying, really. So once you have gotten the domain and the site itself transferred over to GoDaddy, then all you have to do is actually follow the instructions in the Scenario 9 document that's on the home page of the VA Classroom course. So if you log into VA Classroom and you go to the home page of the training for this course, there are links to a bunch of documents that match up to Scenario 1 through Scenario 9 or 10, I think it is. And Scenario 9 is the one you want. So basically what you're going to be doing is you'll have, by this point, the old HTML-based site will be there on GoDaddy because you will have migrated it over. And what you're going to do is install WordPress into a new folder on that domain. So through GoDaddy, you'll be able to install WordPress at what I recommend is herdomain.com/new site. And then you build the site, all while keeping the original old site online, so nobody sees what's happening. I mean, you can use the maintenance mode plugin to protect against wandering eyes and all that. And then when the site is ready to go, there are some steps you can follow that are outlined in that document that will allow you to flip the switch, so to speak, so that anyone going to the old site, any page on the old site, will end up on the new Thesis-based site. And there are a few things you're going to have to consider that are mentioned in the document about redirects and stuff like that, because if you just leave the old HTML files floating around the internet, those are the files that probably people are going to be landing on by default. If they Google something related to your client's site, there are bound to be links that point from Google to those old pages. And there are things you can do to ensure that those old pages redirect seamlessly to the new corresponding page on the new site. So all that is in the Scenario 9 document on the homepage of the Web Design Specialist course. Yeah, and I think that was it for questions. The other thing I wanted to mention before we wrap up, I guess, is that being that we are, kind of finished with the course, it passed really fast, I wanted to let you guys know that if you're interested in keeping up to date with different web design tips and tutorials and stuff, and I send these out to all my students that I run directly through my own site, then I would love to have you sign up. I set up a special list for you guys, and I'll send those kinds of tips and updates and tutorials out to you as well, so you can continue with your learning. So it'll be stuff about Thesis, and it'll be stuff about everything from free cool things you can use in Photoshop to tutorials on how to do this and that and all that kind of thing. So the URL to sign up to that list, and I'll warn you, it's a completely ugly looking plain page, but I set it up very quickly before we started today. It's girlsguidetowebdesign.com/VA classroom. And if you enter your name and email in there, then you'll automatically be signed up to get all those student updates that I send out. And I'll post the link to this in the message board as well, in case you don't have a chance to do it now or you're not listening live on the webinar. So it's girlsguidetowebdesign.com/VA classroom. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Amanda. That was these Q&As are informative, and I know we've been getting some real good feedback from it. So thanks for sharing a lot of really technical wisdom with our audience. And the other thing I would say for those listening, you've really had, this course has been very much it's probably been a gift to many of you, because the reality is, and I've looked at a lot of training programs in the design space, and nothing really offers what Amanda does in terms of the ability to create exactly what your clients want, not stuff that's just out of a box or a template, whereas some clients that might work for, but a lot of clients are looking for something that's special and unique and is suited to their needs, and that's what this course really, I think, has helped you to learn. And the great thing is that all the training resources, the materials, the recordings, this recording that'll be available in the training area the next day, this is all available for you indefinitely. So go back, go through all the videos, go through the tutorials, use the social network, and post your questions where other students will be there to, and you can certainly have some collective intelligence in there to share your ideas and resources and things that come up, and even snags that you come across with sites that you're working on. So thanks, Amanda. This has been a really, really terrific course.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been lots of fun. It was great to meet everybody, and I hope everybody keeps in touch. I always love to see what students create with their newfound knowledge. It's super fun to see.
Yeah, and with that being said, and you may have already said this already or in another video, but definitely as you create your sites, some of you may have done this already or are doing this, definitely post new sites that you create, that you're saying, based on what I learned here, this is, you could send it to support, we'll get it to Amanda, or you can pop it in the social network, because we'd love to see I know you would love to see the fruit of your labor, Amanda, seeing wow, this is some pretty cool results that have come about through what they learned in this program.
Yes, I would love to. Please send your links. Send all the links you've got.
Cool. And I would definitely sign up for Amanda's tips. I mean, that would just add ongoing value to you, especially if you're going to specialize in this area. Some of you might be using this just to build your own site, but I know a lot of you are probably thinking, my clients need graphic design work, they need new websites, so I'm sure you're thinking about how you're going to build this out as a service. And so what I'll do, Amanda, also I'll broadcast that to the whole list. I'll send an email out when we send our survey out this week, and make sure that they have a chance to sign up for your tips and get on your list as well.
Great, that would be wonderful.
Good. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Amanda, and we'll definitely see you on another call sometime soon.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.